to Rachel Space. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, depending where you're watching from. Today we'll be talking about conception. Remember, we said conception is the process by which the sperm mixes with the egg and then conception takes place. Now today we'll be talking about the stages that involve conception. Remember again, we say conception is the biological process by which a sperm fertilizes an egg, leading to pregnancy. There are stages or phases, there are stages or processes that involve conception. Before a lady can take in or become pregnant, first there must be ovulation, which means this person or this lady will go through menstrual flow. After your menstrual flow, then ovulation set in. But before then, based on personal experience, there's something I've always heard people say. I don't know if you've ever taken time to study yourself or study your body and know how your body works. Others will tell you that ovulation starts 14 days after menstrual flow. I don't know about all this. I don't know. It seems like ovulation happens to me twice. When I'm menstruating, like 3 days within the line of that menstrual flow. Just for some people, their flow lasts for 3 days, while for others, some last for 5 days. Now, I noticed within that 3 days, after the first day has a heavy flow, the second day heavy flow, the third day in between a mid flow, my flow stopped at the third day. So after that third day, the fourth day that comes with the weak flow of the menstruation, I notice I ovulate in between. If you've ever taken time to check yourself very well, you see within those times when the blood is not flowing, you will experience the slimy substance, which is the ovulation. That most times it comes, paired with the pinkish blood. Most times that come with it. You are actually ovulating within that period. When you try to touch it or you've ever examined it, it's slimy in between. So which actually means that if something happens between that time, remember we say that sperm takes 5 days before it dies. So which simply means if something happens within that time, it will actually stay alive waiting for that 5 days when the re-ovulation takes place. While others won't even notice. If you're those that, you're trying to conceive and tracking your ovulation is usually difficult for you, you can actually try to have sex within that time frame that I set. From that 3 days after the flow, when the flow is no longer heavy, those times you began to see faint blood. Yeah, just that time you began to see that pinkish blood attached with a slimy substance. You're actually ovulating too. So if you know that you don't always keep time to those changes, you don't know when you're ovulating and you're trying to conceive, I think it's actually very fair if you try to have sex within that period and then the sperm stays healthy, waiting till that 5 days. It'll just stay there healthy, waiting till that 5 days. So the time when the man ovulation comes, is still healthy. Now, after this ovulation we are talking about, after the stages of ovulation, then we'll have the sperm transport and capacitation. Now, during ejaculation, sperm are deposited into the vagina. They must navigate through the cervix and the uterus to reach the fallopian tubes. Sperm undergo capacitation, a process that enables them to penetrate the egg's outer layers. This journey can take several hours, and sperm can survive in the female reproductive tract for up to 5 days. Remember, I talked about these 5 days earlier. Now we'll have fertilization. That is now when the whole thing has joined together. They have joined together. Now the union of sperm and egg. Fertilization typically occurs in the fallopian tube when a sperm successfully penetrates the egg. Mind you, the sperm's acrosome releases enzymes that break down the egg's protective layers, allowing the sperm to enter. Once inside, the sperm's genetic material merges with that of the egg, forming a zygote, which is now that time they began to feel, but at that time, you still don't know that there's something there. Now, early development and embryo formation. Enzyme begins to divide and form a blastocyst, a cluster of cells that will develop into the embryo and placenta. This process takes about a week, during which the blastocyst travels down the fallopian tube to the uterus. Now, we'll talk about implementation. Embedding in the uterine line. They are forming the wipes together, Implantation occurs when the blastocyst attaches to the thickened uterine lining, endometrium. This step is vital for establishing pregnancy. The process typically begins 6 to 11 days after fertilization, can take several days to complete. Now, what are we talking about? What I'm saying is that after your menstrual flow, and then within that ovulation time, nobody actually know when the exact time when this pregnancy happens or when the implantation begins to start. That is why from the day one where you were being told that you're pregnant, we count the first day of your menses, the last time of your menses, as 1 month. For instance, if my last menstrual flow was on the 19th of May, and at the 19th of, 19th of June, I began to feel some sort of way. My body changes. I began to have some signs that I feel maybe I'm sick, and I decide to take a pregnancy test. Mind you that at first, if you're using the test strip, you will see HCCG. Some HCCG comes on a very high level. Some comes at 5 mil and above. So if it is too early, when you use a pregnancy test strip, you might not detect it. You might not detect it. It might give you an invalid sign. It might be inaccurate. It might show you that you're not pregnant. It might just show you one line, because the HCCG level is still very low to ascertain. Remember, that is that time when, if you want to use urine to test your pregnancy, they will tell you to use early morning urine when you've not eaten anything, to ascertain, because at that time when it's still concentrated, the HCCG level can be ascertained. But if you're using a blood protein, like when you want to do a pregnancy test, you use a blood sample to do it, it is more very accurate. Now, if it is still early, your pregnancy test strip might not detect it, except you're using a blood test. Now, when it detects, from that day when they detect that you're pregnant, let's just assume that it is in April. it is now in April and you saw your last menses at May, let's say May 19th, and in April 19th, you've begun to feel some sort of way and goes for pregnancy test, and it shows that you're pregnant. From that day, we count May as 1 month. We count May as 1 month and begin to give you 19th of April as 8 weeks. Except when you now go to scan will not say is 2 weeks and 3 days, 2 weeks and 5 days, 2 weeks and 0, which means it turns 2 weeks that day. Then if it is a day above that 2 weeks, you began to get 2 weeks and 1, 2 weeks and 2, 2 weeks and 3, which means 2 weeks and 3 days, 2 weeks and 5 days, 2 weeks and 10 days, and so on. Now, from that period, when you've gotten that period, you started counting 1 month. That is why when you're pregnant, you don't tend to have your kids based on that actual date that a hospital gave you. It has to be 2 weeks above or 2 weeks before. Remember that the whole 2 weeks you use in your ovulation is also counted as being pregnant. And mind you, after that 2 weeks, we'll begin. Now, in our next time, on the next time on the channel, we'll talk extensively on how to count pregnancies from day 1 to day 2. Thank you. Press the thumb button to subscribe.